Welcome to the third audio podcast of the Leadership in Toastmasters series, delivered by Albert Core, Distinguished Toastmaster. Here, the General Evaluator. Today, we will be exploring another important meeting role, the General Evaluator. For those who have been General Evaluator before, do you recall your first time serving as one? My first time serving as a General Evaluator was in Johor Jaya Toastmasters Club, an established community Toastmasters club in a city 300 kilometers away from where I'm based. For unknown reasons, they put their faith in me, although I just spent 3 months in Toastmasters at the time, or perhaps they simply didn't know about that. How did it go? I went in fully prepared, armed with head knowledge via the Master Your Meetings manual by Toastmasters. I gave a total of 10 areas of improvement to the 18-year-old club. I could clearly see some of these friendly smiles began to disappear halfway through my report. This is one of the lessons which I have learned the hard way, along with the other tips which I'll be sharing today. To start off, there is no hard and fast rule on the requirement to be General Evaluator. It is only recommended that the General Evaluator has experience evaluating for a few times. This makes sense, as the General Evaluator may be offering evaluations to evaluators as well. Therefore, the General Evaluator has to be experienced, at least has witnessed or at least has tried evaluation for a couple of times. The General Evaluator can be a member of the club itself, although the approach and the tone can be different for internal and external General Evaluators. Nevertheless, the 7 tips which I will be sharing should apply to both cases. The first tip that I wish to share is for the General Evaluator to familiarize with the flow of the meeting. There are a few questions which the General Evaluator may want to check with the Vice President Education. For example, does the General Evaluator preside over the evaluation session? In some clubs, General Evaluators will only be presenting the report during the General Evaluation section which is stipulated in the agenda. This happens to me personally when I was visiting a club in China as the General Evaluator. I was already geared up to deliver and to preside over the evaluation session, only to be rudely stopped and to be told that I will only be offering my evaluation for 5 minutes at the end of the meeting. So therefore, this was a lesson to me, and make no assumptions, although in most cases at this part of the world, the General Evaluator does preside over the entire evaluation session. The next question which the General Evaluator may want to ask is that if he or she needs to read the notes to the evaluator before each project speech. In some clubs, the General Evaluator does not read the notes to the evaluator, but in the event that the General Evaluator will need to read the notes, make sure the notes are accessible either in the agenda itself or in the evaluation form to be shared with the General Evaluator. The next question for the General Evaluator is that if there's any changes to the agenda and or the role players, this is to ensure the smooth flow during the evaluation section of the meeting. The second tip I would like to share is for the General Evaluator to check with the Vice President Education and the evaluators if there are any particular areas which need attention. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, it should, because this is just similar between a speaker and an evaluator. Before the project speech, the evaluator should speak to the speaker to see if there are any particular areas which the speaker wants the evaluator to concentrate on. And this operates the same for General Evaluator. The third tip for the General Evaluator is to identify a structure which is comfortable to the General Evaluator itself. Some clubs would provide a template report, but in the event that there is no template report, have a certain structure which you are comfortable with. And if you don't have any, I have one that I want to share with you all. It's called the ERM. E for evaluators. So the General Evaluator will need to offer evaluations to the evaluator to see if the evaluator has been motivational, specific, and also tactful, covering the important points in their evaluation. The next will be R, the role players who are not evaluated. There are some role players in the meeting, such as the president himself or herself, the Toastmaster of the day or the Toastmaster of the evening, table topics master, as well as a few other roles which may not have received any evaluation. So this is where General Evaluator adds value to these role players by giving them an evaluation as well, as brief as it can be. The next one, M, for the meeting itself. So the General Evaluator is also expected to give some feedback on the quality of the meeting in general. There are no limitations in any areas, but the report should be concise and brief. Now, the general evaluator does not usually evaluate the speakers, and I would certainly recommend that because of time constraint as well as the evaluation will have been given by the evaluators. So if it is a conflicting evaluation, it may confuse the speaker, and if it corroborates the evaluator's evaluation, then it's redundant. So therefore, I don't think that the general evaluator should be evaluating the speakers. The fourth tip is to keep the environment conducive. Feedback is something that is tough to take in. Human nature requires feedback but hates it being delivered if it's not delivered in a positive manner. I'm sure the general evaluator is also a member, and when he or she receives evaluation, he or she will want it to be delivered in a very constructive manner. So keep the session educational but lighthearted at the same time. If there is a situation which allows you to, do add humor when necessary so that everyone have a good laugh but in a light-hearted way or in a positive manner. The next tip is to recognize and then recommend. In most cases, for the external general evaluators, they would be guests to the club. And being a guest to the club, the normal etiquette is to be respectful to the host. And to do this, the general evaluator can first recognize the efforts which are being put in by the club itself. And this is in line with our normal best practices of evaluation. Give them due credit for areas that they have done well. Maybe add one or two areas of recommendation where the club can easily implement for the next meeting. If there are any additional recommendations that you wish to make, you can always make to the Vice President Education in private after the meeting. The sixth tip to share is to offer the evaluation from the club's perspective and to avoid any club comparison. Now, certain clubs may have different practices from others, and there may be a reason for the club to do what they do. For example, a club which I have attended have a very short general evaluator section for only 5 minutes, and I was asking them why was that? What's the reason behind a pretty short allocation? Because in this part of the world, general evaluators report can go up to 7 minutes or 8 minutes. So this card has a particularly short one. And they said it is because they would be having a session where they will speak directly to the general evaluator, and also because it is a corporate club, so time is very important. So this gives me a different perspective as to why they did what they did, and I avoid judging them. So for the general evaluators, it is important not to compare clubs, especially to start sentences with, my club did this, so please do that as well. This can create a certain pushback because they will just say that, oh, well, it is your club which does that. So, I mean, it's good for your club. It doesn't mean that it's good for my club as well. So whenever we offer evaluation, we offer it from the club's perspective, and we have to ensure that it gives a distinctive advantage to the club whom we are evaluating, and not because they have to do it just because we have done it as well. Now, the last tip, and I think this is a very important one, is to manage time. I noticed that in this part of the world, general evaluators usually offer some comments after each evaluator has given their evaluation. They would add in certain feedbacks for the evaluator itself, but that may take 1 to 2 minutes on its own. And comments like this are not usually stipulated for in the agenda. If you observe the agenda, there's hardly any time between each and every evaluator. So for general evaluator to add on 1 to 2 minutes of feedback between each and every evaluation will significantly add to the time of the meeting. And I've noticed this is how most meetings went over time. So general evaluators should cooperate with the club in terms of time management and to avoid long comments between evaluation. I once attended a meeting where the general evaluator spent a total of 1 hour to offer feedback between each and every evaluation, and I certainly do not recall that general evaluator ever invited back to the club. So try to keep the main comments in the general evaluator's report, which have been stipulated for in the agenda, and for the rest of the evaluation session, be a facilitator and make sure that it is a smooth transition from one to the next without offering too long a comment. Maybe make some short, brief comments about the evaluation and then move on to the next one. So these are the tips. These are the 7 tips. I will just repeat them very quickly for the general evaluator. Firstly, to familiarize with the flow of the meeting. Secondly, to check with the VPE and the evaluators if any particular areas need attention. Third, to identify a structure which the general evaluator can be comfortable with. Fourth, to keep the environment conducive. Fifth, to recognize and then recommend. Number 6, evaluate from the club's perspective and to avoid club comparison. And number 7, the last but not least, to manage time. These are the 7 tips which I have found very useful, and I hope that this will also motivate all of you who have never been general evaluators to take up this very unique leadership role in the club. And also for those who have been general evaluators, thank you for the service to the clubs and continue to shine as general evaluators. Thank you.